Well, good afternoon again, and Shabbat Shalom. We're getting ready now to receive Rabbi Bernstein all the way from Edat Derek, or the Congregation of the Way down in Fort Myers. As I said earlier, he's part of Shuvu. He's one of the professors, rabbis in Yeshiva Shuvu. He goes around every time Rabbi Shapiro asks him to do something, and he said, sure, right? And he's here with his lovely wife, and thank you for coming, this Shabbat to share with us in this Parashah. In this season, as I was saying earlier, this is a great season we're getting entering now with Hanukkah. And we always come into this season also with an expectation, as we know what happened in time back on the 25th of Kislev. And we want to also do it joyfully and bring others into the fold and the full understanding of what Hanukkah is all about. So I don't know exactly what you're going to share this morning, but you probably have all these things wrapped around along with Parashah Vayeshev. So come on up and introduce yourself, Raf. Bernstein, Steve Bernstein. Turn it on.
And hopefully that'll do it. Yay. I can hear myself. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's an interesting time of year. It's the most interesting time. No. So we come to Parashah Vayeshev, and one of the interesting things about how the Torah portions are carved up, they weren't always carved up this way. We used to have a 3-year cycle to do all of the Torah. Now and then we got a 1-year cycle. And one of the things that happened when we got the 1-year cycle is that there were some very interesting pairings between the parshot themselves and the time of the year, and the Moadim, and the season, and all of that fun stuff. So I'll talk a little bit about the season before we get going into the Parsha. We'll be starting actually in Genesis 37, verse 19. We'll start there. But the time of the year, the year is really divided into 2 sectors. The first sector starts in Sukkot, which comes immediately 4 days after Yom Kippur, arguably the most soul-searching, intense day of the year. Some of the Rabbanim will describe it as the most joyous time of the year. It's a little hard to see that when you're in the midst of it. Sometimes afterwards you get it. But then, kaboom, 4 days later we go to Sukkot, which is arguably the most joyous season of the year, with all kinds of festivals, and you build a sukkah, and the kids like to go camping out, and the adults go, yeah, I did that when I was a kid. And singing and dancing and Hallel, songs of praise, and back in the days of the temple, we did the Nisul Hamayim, the water drawing ceremony, where halfway through the night, everybody gathered in the temple in the Azara in the courtyard around the altar, and the priest, who was the priest of the day, they, like the military, you had a duty officer, and this priest would come down off of the altar and walk out of the water gate long before Richard Nixon, and would walk down to the pool of Shiloam, which, how many of you have been to Jerusalem? Baruch Hashem, all the way down the city of David is straight downhill, and it's not so close. And there'd be singing and dancing and torches burning in the middle of the night, and more dancing and singing and eating and drinking, maybe a little more drinking. This was a very, very festive time of the year, and the priest would come to the pool of Siloam, and the steps which they have uncovered, you can actually sit on the steps today of the pool of Siloam. Wonderful archaeological work they're doing in the city of David. When you go, don't miss the city of David tour. And would fill this pitcher, gold and silver pitcher, with water from the pool of Siloam. Yay. And then would turn around and walk all the way back up the hill. Me, I take a bus. Followed by singing and dancing and torches, and everybody's going wild. And gets back up to the altar at the crack of dawn. And on the altar, on the Mizbeach itself. Now remember, the altar is pretty big. It's bigger than this room. Okay? And he would go to the north side of the altar, and between the posts, the horns of the altar, is a gold cup that conveniently one of his assistants had placed there. And he would pour the water into the cup. And it would fill the cup. It would overflow the cup. It would wet the front side of the altar, the north side of the altar. Very dramatic and very emotional. Everybody just took a lot away from this. And interestingly, it was at this time that Yeshua in the crowd stood up and said, "All who thirst, come and drink of me." It was the water drawing ceremony, the Nisul Hamayim, that made the political reference of his declaration that he was the Mashiach, that he was the Messiah. And everybody got that because they're in the middle of the water drawing ceremony, you know. Most of them are not, you know, they got it. So this is the beginning of the season of joy. Right? This took place on Hoshana Rabbah, the great day of the feast. And there was one more day, because who wants to stop when you're having such a good time? And then things progressed. Joy filled everyone's hearts. And we get to the season of Hanukkah. We get to the season of Hanukkah. We're still happy. We are still happy. And in fact, the reason we have 8 days of Hanukkah is because when the temple was defiled, we missed Sukkot. So we know it's not Sukkot, but we're going to pretend it's Sukkot. We're going to do Sukkot again, so we'll do 8 days, and that's why Hanukkah is 8 days long. And this continues on to Purim, Tu B'Shvat in the middle, to Pesach, all the way to Shavuot, which is sort of the culmination of the season of joy. And then we get the season of introspection. And we got to kind of turn inside and look. And we get the season of introspection all the way to Rosh Hashanah and ultimately Yom Kippur. And then it ends, and 4 days later we got Sukkot. Okay, all of a sudden, right? So we're used to kind of stunning things like that happening, and that's Hanukkah. It's an incredible festival. It's an incredible festival. Okay? And oh, by the way, the tradition of giving presents on Hanukkah is strictly American. Right? Well, you can't compete with Christmas. You cannot compete with Christmas in the eyes of a 4-year-old. You can't do it. Okay? So don't try, you know. Okay, a present a day for 8 days. All right. You know, that was when I was a kid. So it must be at least 3 presents a day today to give to the children. So don't torture the children. Let them, you know, give them some presents. They like that. Okay, and then we could take some Sephardi traditions, which kind of bled into Israel and sucked them back into the Ashkenazi community, because you know what? Good stuff for Hashem is good stuff for Hashem. I don't care what the background is. So we eat sufganiyot, so we eat donuts. You know, we eat more donuts in Hanukkah than they do in Canada all 12 months of the year. And we eat potato latkes, because not as good as donuts, but still really good, and that's the Ashkenazi tradition, so we eat potato pancakes. Why? Fried in oil, right? Okay, and so the oil lasted 8 days and all of that fun stuff, which is nowhere to be found in the historical texts. It's not in First Maccabees or Second Maccabees, but it is in the Talmud, and there's reasons why it's there. So this is the season that we're in. And now look at the Torah portion. Vayeshev. Vayeshev. And he sat. And he sat. Really? Okay, we were talking about this morning with some of the Shuvu folks. Yoshev or Yashav is the root of the word, and it does mean sit or sat. Vayeshev does mean and he sat. But the root can also mean and he dwelled. And he dwelled. Okay? The halacha for Sukkot taken from Torah is leshev basukah. Same word, yoshev basukah. You are to yoshev in the sukkah. Right? So you're to dwell in the sukkah. Well, it really means to go sit. So sit in the sukkah. And oh, by the way, the sages explained to us, if it's raining and you sit in the sukkah, you're an idiot. Go inside. Yoshev also means something else. It means besides just dwell and sit, it also means to reign. Right? David, HaMelech David, Yashav, he reigned 40 years. There's an interesting camp song about that, which I will share with a few of you later. It's a camp song, so it's not really appropriate. Okay, so Yoshev, Vayeshev, Yoshev means all of these things, and you can't say that it means one thing and not the other. So you have to look at the context and look at what you're trying to do and where you're trying to go. But the interesting thing here is Yaakov, Shev. Yaakov sat, Yaakov dwelled, and in a way, Yaakov reigned. In a way, Yaakov reigned, right? Because Yaakov's name isn't Yaakov, is it? It's Yisrael. Okay, so Yisrael, and where was he? He was in Yisrael. So Yisrael reigned in Yisrael. It was called Yisrael because it was him that reigned in, you get the picture, okay. So the portion starts with this intense comment and then really builds into two stories. There are two main stories. One is the story of Yosef, which everybody's familiar with, and the other is the story of Tamar, which everybody should be familiar with. Yeah, I got Ron Warren there. He knows everything already. We know this. We know this. And that was just for everybody that's watching that's not here. Ron Warren is here, okay. He's embarrassed. Yeah, I believe that. We're all good. So we've got the two stories. Why do we have two stories? Well, it's Yisrael. And Yisrael has two stories. So starting really looking in verse 19, the brothers are with the sheep. Interesting there. The brothers are with the sheep, and Joseph is coming to see them. And they look to one another, behold, the dreamer cometh. Right? The dreamer comes. Now, they're not real happy with their brother. Now, why aren't they happy with their brother? Well, Tom read this morning. Dad always liked him best. Okay? We got a lot of parents. We got parents here? Okay, fathers? Which one of your children is the most favored? Okay? Wise men did not raise their hand. You don't do this. You don't do this. right? And especially you don't do it so that the other kids know that this is the most favored kid. Right? You give him a pretty shirt, tunic, coat, katonet. You give him a pretty katonet. You better give the other ones a pretty katonet too. Right? Not so. Didn't do it. Why not? Well, we sort of have a tradition of favoritism, don't we? Right? Who did Rivka favor? Rebecca favored Yaakov, didn't she? Right? And Yitzchak favored Esav, right? No. Thank you for not throwing rotten tomatoes at me. I deliberately said something wrong. He didn't. He favored the food that Esav brought. Right? You know, it's like the Grinch bringing the roast beast. He liked the food, but not Yaakov. Yaakov was favored by Rivka because he was Yaakov. Esav, it was what he brought. It was the food. Okay, so here we have Yaakov, and what does Yaakov do? He's got his favorite wife, and so her kid is his favorite. Right? This is not done in wisdom. This is done in humanity. This is what we do. I love my wife very much. This is the reason that I don't touch other women, by the way, is because I love my wife so much. So if I didn't shake your hand, don't feel slighted. I don't do that with other women. Men, it's all right because it's men. Okay? So I love my wife very much. Okay? And that doesn't mean that I'm going to favor one kid over another. I favor my wife over all of my other wives. All right, so we get that there's a problem brewing. This didn't come out of left field. No pun intended. The brothers are in the field. They're with the sheep. And they're talking amongst themselves. Now, what they're saying is classically known as Lashon Hara. Okay? They're saying things that are absolutely true, but they're evil intent. That's different than a lie. Lashon Hara can be true. It's just evil intent. And so they're looking at him. And they say, here he comes. And they say, come now, therefore, and let us slay him, and let us cast him into one of the pits, and who will say, an evil beast has devoured him, and we shall see what becomes of his dreams. Now, Midrash Rabbah tells us that this is, in fact, Shimon and Levi that are saying, let's kill him. And Reuven says, I think it's a bit harsh. So let's just throw him in a pit, intending to not kill him. And the reason why is shed no blood. Now, interesting, Reuven doesn't say don't shed his blood. He's talking about a general commandment, don't shed blood, which we had from the time of Noah, don't shed blood. So in general, we shouldn't shed blood, so let's not shed his either. Although the idea of doing him in isn't such a bad one. That's sort of the context that we're getting. So they throw him in a pit. So Joseph came, they took the coat, the ketonot, and they threw him in a pit. Pit was empty, there was no water in it, they weren't trying to drown him. Okay, pit was empty. Rashi also explains to us that means that there's not snakes or other evil critters in there that could have killed him. The intent was to not kill him by throwing him in the pit. And he couldn't get out of the pit. They saw a bunch of Ishmaelites coming from Gilad, and Yehuda says, hey, we can do it a business. Let's do it a business, and we'll sell them. We'll go to Egypt. They'll be out of our hair, and we won't have shed any blood, and we won't have to worry about it anymore. So they take them out of the pit, and they sell them to the Midianites. Midianites, Ishmaelites, different Rabbanim. Some say it's actually the same people. Some people, the Ishmaelites, are a guide to the Midianites. Whatever. They sold him into the caravan. Off he goes to Egypt. Okay? And then things happen to him in Egypt, but I'm not going to talk about that today. End of story number 1. Story number 2. Story number 2 starts at chapter 38, I believe. It came to pass at that time that Yehuda went down from his brethren and turned to a certain Adulamite, whose name was Hira. And Yehuda saw that there was a daughter of a Canaanite woman whose name was Shua, and he took her, in a most biblical sense. She conceived and bore a son, Er. So now Yehuda has an heir. That's a joke in English. I got to work on my writers here. Okay, and she conceived again, bore a son named Onan. And she bore another son named Shelah. And he was at Chaziv when she bore him. Yehuda took a wife for Er, for his firstborn. And her name was Tamar, which is a date, the fruit, a date. You know, you could have a date with a date. They set a date, and they got married. And Yehuda's firstborn was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. Okay? Now, there's a couple ways to get your name recorded in the scripture. This is not the good way. Right? Very brief and to the point, and you didn't make it. Okay, so what's the danger here? The danger is that Tamar, the widowed wife, had absolutely no standing within the clan. She needed to be reattached to the family. We're gonna make her an offer she can't refuse, and keep her in the family. Why? Property, status. You could starve to death if you have no status within a clan or family. So this is a process of estate planning, if you will, that is discussed a whole lot in the oral law. There's an entire tractate of Talmud about it called Yevamot. This is called Yibum, which, to make it complicated in English, we call it Levirate marriage. We got that okay? Levirate marriage? In Espanol, I have no idea. Okay. So what's supposed to happen? What's supposed to happen is somebody else of the family has to go and get the estranged, widowed child. Because the child becomes one of the heirs of the clan or the family, or both. And then the mother, because of the child, is not estranged and cast out. She has an inheritance because her kid has an inheritance. Okay, so the kid doesn't count as the kid of the plantor. The kid counts as the kid of the deceased first husband. Got it? And it's strictly an estate planning gig. I mean, this is what we're trying to do. So, Onan goes and pretends to do his duty with Tamar, only practices the worst kind of birth control one could ever imagine, and intentionally does not impregnate her. So God sees this and he's killed. So the parallelism between Er and Onan is rather obvious in the Torah. You don't have things next to each other in the Torah for no reason. So the Chazal, the sages say, well, obviously that's what Er did also. He didn't impregnate her either. So that's why he was killed in one sentence. So here's Tamar. And the two brothers have been killed by God. There's one son left. Problem? He's a little kid. So he's got to grow up before he can impregnate Tamar by Yibum, by the Levirate marriage. And so she waits. Whilst she is waiting, Yehuda's wife dies, Shua. Shua passes away. Yehuda has no other wife, so he's there. And this takes place for a while. He's sort of there. He has no wife. Tamar has no husband. Shelah grows up. Shelah grows up. And Tamar's waiting. And waiting. And waiting. And there's no word from Yehuda. Okay, I waited. The kid's growing up. Come on, let's get at it. I need to be included back in the family. That was the agreement. It's not happening. So what does Tamar do? She's going to pull a ruse. She's going to pull a ruse. So she puts on her most seductive clothing and goes and hangs out down on the street corner just when Judah is walking by, and it works. And it works. Judah says, I want me some of that. So they negotiate a price, right? A price that would not be appropriate in today's world, but I'll take a fattened kid, and it's okay. But I don't have any of that stuff here. I'll send it to you. Right. Yeah, that's it. You'll send it to me. Well, I need a pledge in its place. So it gives him his staff, his ring, and yeah, but it's a cord, but what does that mean? Right, so a lot of the sages really say that it's a sash. It's something he tied his coat with. So she says, okay, that's good. I got the signet ring. which shows it's you. I got the staff, which also shows it's you, and I got the cord. Okay, it's good for me. And off they go. And now she gets pregnant. And in her mind, mission accomplished. So Yehuda goes to send the actual price for the transaction, shall I say, and they can't find Tamar because she's gone. She's gone. But she retained the pledge stuff. She retained the ring, she retained the staff, and she retained the belt, the cord, the whatever you want to call it. Obi, if you're Japanese. Okay. So then, the busybodies, if you will, come to Yehuda, who's the head of this clan, says, hey, this woman that was not supposed to be unmarried and everything, she's pregnant. She committed adultery. And Yehuda says, well, okay. And we know what Torah says, kill her. And so they're taking her off to kill her, and she produces the ring, the staff, and the cord, and says, see, it was Yehuda that did this. And the reason I did this was that I didn't get pledged Shelah. So we have something very, very interesting. Was Tamar wrong in what she did? She lied to Yehuda. She deceived them all. But what was the reason? The reason was that she had been wronged according to an agreement, and it was going to pass her by. She was going to be killed. So what she did was wrong for all the right reasons. I sense a theme. So we look back at Yaakov. And what did Yaakov do? Yaakov bought the birthright from Esau. The birthright was Yaakov's from that point on. Right? And there was a sign of the transaction. It was a bowl of lentil soup. Must have been pretty good lentil soup. But that was the sign of the transaction. Chazal explains to us the transaction was an actual market value of the birthright. But the sign of the transaction was the soup. Like the covenant with Abraham was made between him and God, and the sign of the covenant was the Brit Milah. That was not the covenant, that was the sign of the covenant. The lentil soup was the sign of the covenant. Okay? What's the sign of the covenant with Tamar? The signet ring, the staff, and the cord. Okay? So what does Yehuda do? My bad. She's right. And Tamar, in fact, has twins. Right? Peretz and Zerach. Very, very interesting stuff. And then we come to the end of story number 2. End of story number 2. Story number 1 is about Yosef, right? And Yosef goes to Egypt. Nobody knows where he is. Nobody knows what he's doing, except Potiphar's wife. Okay. He's gone. He's hidden. The brothers don't know where he is. Yaakov doesn't know. Nobody knows where he is. He's gone. He's hidden from sight. We don't see him. Yosef is hidden. What happens on the other side? We got Peretz. Peretz begets and begets and begets, and guess who comes out of Peretz? Relative of Tamar comes out of Peretz. David, Melech Israel, Chai v'Kayam. David, the king of Israel, and ultimately Mashiach, which ties back to the first story. So really, if you look, this Parsha is the beginnings of both Messiahs. This Parsha shows Yosef being hidden and the progeny of Tamar becoming King David and then Mashiach ben David. Okay? And all of this during Hanukkah, which is the feast of what? Dedication. The dedication, the sanctification of the temple, the sanctification of the place and the time of God. And isn't Vayeshev a picture of this sanctification of Israel with Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David? Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you. Do you see now the connection about what I was telling you at the beginning? Every Torah portion, you can see the Mashiach, and you see a direct connection here, obviously, with the two Messiahs.